I just still fall in love with just the gorgeous prose and the feels and all the different points of view or things I haven't seen or read before. And I'm still excited about it.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanny Show and our latest episode of Signal Boost. I am Sean, and I am speaking today with Michael Damian Thomas, the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Hugo and Locus Award-winning Uncanny magazine, which has just launched its Year 13, The Space Unicorn Believes in You Kickstarter campaign. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast again.
Absolutely. Well, we had to do it. It is, I think, now... I think it's just like science fiction unofficial law at this point.
Law that I mean, there's been quite a few years where like there's been, your Skiffy and Fanty got so popular that it was hard to get on just because of scheduling conflicts.
Well, because I'm not in charge of scheduling anymore, and they schedule like 3 months in advance.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, like the olden days when I was like, I got a new magazine called Uncanny Magazine. Let's all record this in a hotel room in Minnesota.
We did record in a hotel room. You are correct. Oh my goodness.
You and Paul, and yeah, it was good times.
We were so nervous back then. Like we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just like, if we just ask questions that don't sound stupid, I think we won the day. That was like our goal. I
think it would be fascinating to go back 13 years or 12 years ago and listen to how that went, because I have little memory of that whole convention at this point. It was kind of a wild...
Yeah, because that was Convergence, if I'm correct?
That was a Convergence back when it was in its old hotel near the Mall of America, and it was a wild, wacky party. And
yeah, Convergence is a little different now. It's still wacky, but it's not quite the same.
I have not been back. The 2020s have been very, very busy for me.
Well, okay, so before we get into the full discussion, this is just a reminder for folks that if you have any questions, thoughts, please, skiffyandfanty@gmail.com is the easiest way to do so. And then just don't forget that we do these live if you'd like to come and chat and hang out with us almost every Friday at 7 p.m. Central on our Alphabet Streams Twitch channel. So please come by if you'd like. And then... I don't know, shameless plugging, but just remember we have a Patreon, and so like if you want to vote in Torch Cinema polls and pick movies that honestly sometimes they turn out not to be so bad, so you guys need to do a better job on your voting, by the way, or just like hang out with us, please do that. So with that in mind, or not that in mind, I want to switch over to the big question, which is,
yes,
this is year 13.
It is gone. Uncanny Magazine's been going for a minute. It is, going 12 years down. I'm currently editing the final issue of year 12. So this Kickstarter doesn't work out. It's the end of Uncanny. But if it does, there will be a year 13, which is pretty exciting.
Given that you've been doing this, over a decade now, you've been involved in it literally from the start. How do you keep the spark for this, like, in yourself?
Well, I think for me, I just still love it so much. It's just, I get so excited every time I open up a story and punch the air, because like, oh, this is just the best story. And it's like, one of the great things about, the field is that like, it's always changing. There's always new people coming in. There's always people who I love who are coming up with new stuff and like, going to the next level of awesome all the time and finding, and it's still, and then like, there are still so many readers, that's the thing. We keep expanding our readership, and then, people connect with the stories, and to see that feedback out there, where people are like, I saw myself, or this story has meant so much to me. This story is like completely what we're all living through right this second. Let's all share it. There's still all these moments, and there's always just, and working with, bringing in new staff members, bringing in new, it's just change, and it's exciting. And I still think that these stories, are, I just still fall in love with just the gorgeous prose and the feels and all the different points of view or things I haven't seen or read before. And I'm still excited about it. I am not there are things like business wise, the business of publishing can be very, some days, the whatever is going on that's going to, grind my gears. But when it comes to the actual content, the artwork, the fiction, the poetry, the essays, the interviews, the podcast, everything still just makes me go, all right, this is still really, I forget, am I allowed to drop F-bombs on the Skippy and Fanty show?
Sure.
Yay, fuck yeah. Yes, I still go like, oh my God, this is so fucking great. I love these things. I love what stories can do. I love this art form. I love how it said, just all the things about what a great, well-crafted story can do. And just, like right now, even though it came out a couple of years ago and won a bunch of awards then, like this year when terrible things were happening in the Twin Cities, to get back to Convergence, like having people find Naomi Kritzer's The Year Without Sunshine and get so much from that, that still a couple of years later, it's like, well, now it's the story of the moment because it is about community and it's about how a community, specifically the community of the Twin Cities, can come together with kindness and strength and be there for each other. And it was like watching that on the internet in the last few months being shared, or, it just reminded me like, yeah, this is, or, Samantha Mills' Rabbit Test when that came out, there's always these, and it's not even just that, but it's also the little stories. It just maybe only a couple, I may not see a lot of stuff, but then people will tell me later like, oh, I love this so much. And, it's a special thing. It's a special thing to be running this magazine still.
I have to mention the passion and the joy that you're sending off here, because you mentioned like, if you look around the world and like current events and things, and it sometimes feels like, I don't know, like the story of the world is not a particularly happy one. Literally right now there are these horrible forest fires happening is just like an example, right? And so to see that the joy in the story, not all stories are necessarily like happy in themselves, but they can bring meaning and value. I don't know. There's just something in me that just feels like more people need to talk about how much they love stories. Because I don't know, the world I think is filled too much with all the things that make us angry and not all of the things that bring meaning and value, if that makes sense.
No, what art can do, the transcendent nature of gorgeous art and story, it's still important. And the bastards want to take that away from us. So like, this is not a time to go like, oh, this is frivolous or this is whatever, and we just need to be angry and overtly political and not have art anymore. It's like, no, this is, I mean, there's always a time for it, but this is definitely a time, where, you can find a lot of meaning and a way to look at the world through different lenses and to think about different things. And, great art helps foster empathy, something which is very much needed by a lot of people. It's not just about whiz-bang ideas, great science fiction and fantasy is, it holds up that magnifying glass to our own time, our own world, and makes us think about things in maybe a different way you didn't think about. And that's a powerful, powerful thing, and like, it's so needed and will hopefully always be needed. And, one of the great things about Uncanny being an online magazine is like, the content can get to the people who, as long as you can get on the internet, you can get to these things wherever you are, whatever is going on in your life or in that country, world, whatever, where these are stories where you can still find things that maybe other people are trying to keep from you right now. And that's an important thing. It's an important responsibility. And, yeah, I love Uncanny.
So speaking of responsibility, since you provided me the perfect segue, you obviously don't work alone at Uncanny. You have a whole staff and with various responsibilities. But as somebody working as editor-in-chief, has your process changed in the 13 years you've been doing this? Or is it kind of the same?
No, it's certainly, it changes, as different staff members come in and out. But overall, like, I would like to think, if I were, I love everything that Uncanny has done, but I look at like our early issues and, and things that we did then, the way they were done. I think more important, like, I feel like I read more widely now than I did then. I feel like I do, and Uncanny has done a better job of getting more voices from different backgrounds into the magazine. And that part has changed a lot. The actual like nuts and bolts of stuff, like how an ebook is made, or, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by a snake behind you.
Oh, yeah.
so like, what's that movie? Oh, it's a snake. Okay. Which I should know. There was, it was only, go after a snake. No, the actual, like, it's interesting how little of it has, like, a whole bunch of things were emerging when Uncanny, or were getting cemented when Uncanny was coming out. And, like, but many of the processes have stayed the same, like running the Kickstarters, like how ebooks are actually produced. The ebook technology has not changed. Marketplace shifts and there's stuff with that. But the actual, like, how a magazine is made from moment one to when it is released is fairly similar to how it was back then. It isn't like massively different. Like, I can go down the little things that have changed, but for the most part, it's about the same.
You mentioned markets, and that I think it'd be fair to say that markets can be quite volatile, uproot and fall apart around us. Seemingly, like, one day it could be up and the next day it's gone. I was thinking like the Diamond Distributors situation as one example of this. How have you handled sort of shifts in the sort of third parties that have like distribute and do all of that stuff that isn't the magazine itself? How have you sort of weathered that?
Well, very early on, a lot of other magazines were being very trusting of a very large online retailer that maybe is named after a big river that has a lot of snakes in it. But I never, the thing is, like, I never fully wanted to, like, I knew, like, oh, eggs in that basket, that's trouble. How can we try, and we were building there over time, and it was fine, but it was always in the back of my head, make sure there's many different revenue streams. So we were like we were not the first magazine by any stretch to have done a Kickstarter, or even multiple Kickstarters, but we really embraced the concept of a yearly Kickstarter, and just being able to put the power in directly to our readers, and our community of readers, the Space Unicorn Ranger Corps, as we call them, that they were there to make sure that they bought in each year and, had almost a semblance of sort of ownership of what was going on by being a part of a Kickstarter. And then Patreon came up, and, we have a lot of patrons now, and that's been great. You also have a Patreon, everybody, hint, hint. But, it's, and then, there are other places like Weightless Books, which have been great and with us the whole time. But, the big online retailer, it was a thing where they did help us out a lot, and they increased the, income over there increased and increased and increased. And then they changed the terms very hard. Yeah. And, a program that was working great for every magazine got nuked, and they moved us all to a streaming service where the payouts were extremely less. And then they just changed the terms again, which meant Uncanny pulled itself out, this year, which some of our fellow magazines had already done that, but we were like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I will make less money now. It's not even zero. You're going to like hit me in other ways. So forget this. I'm moving away. So that's hard, because that was, this was a retailer partly because they built a tech thing that people were like, oh, this is perfect for my ebooks, and I'm going to be all in on this company. And then this company was like, oh, we're going to chase rocket ships and data centers, and we don't care about publishing all that much, and we're just going to change our publishing rules hourly. And it's like difficult, because it's like not only are we losing money, you're like, you could say to this big company, like, this is bad for you too. Like, we were all making money this way, and it's like, yeah, but that's not money we care about. We making money over here. We just care about changing the rules every few years, to make sure that, at meetings we say something changed. So yeah, but that has meant that, like, it's very difficult. It's a difficult time for magazines, and it means more so that you're so dependent on your own marketing and reaching your readers and trying to get, being very direct. You can't be passive and say, okay, this big retailer is going to take care of all of it for us. It's on you. It's on you to do the marketing. It's on you to get the stories to the people, and it's on you to convince the people, like right now with this Kickstarter for year 13, like, hey, you love this still? It's you. Yeah. If you want this to continue, here's what you do. If not enough of you do that, it doesn't continue. That's how this works.
This raises a very important thing for me, at least, which is one of the things you're doing in year 13 is a diamond issue, as you're calling it, which is issue 75. And if I were not already somebody who backs Uncanny, and this was my first year thinking about it, you already hit all of my buttons, because the authors that are in this list include some of my favorite authors current. These are folks like Alia de Bodard, John Chu, who was actually on the show not too long ago, R.S.A. Garcia, Naomi Kritzer, Samantha Mills, Sarah Pinsker, Emma Torsch. I might have... and then you've got essays by Tanana Reeve Dew and Tansy Rayner Roberts. You've got more fiction by many, many more people. Maurice Broaddus, even Skiffy Fanti poet extraordinaire Brandon O'Brien is doing poet. Like, there's a lot in here.
Yeah, the issue 75 gimmick is very specifically those writers you just listed for 75 all have previously won an award with an Uncanny story or essay. So all the story writers have all won awards for their story, for an Uncanny story. So
that's incredible.
So Hugo's, Nebulas, Ignites, Sturgeon's, World Fantasy, etc.
Pretty much all across the board here in terms of award winners.
Locus.
And so that was the central choice. And then I guess, I mean, what would be the reason not to back at this point? I just don't understand.
Well, I always understand not everyone can financially do it, but if you can, but if you can, we send, at the higher levels, we'll send you cool stuff. There's cool backer rewards, but also like, it's not just when you back Uncanny, it's kind of the George Bailey moment of explaining the building and loan. Your money's not just, it's in his house and in his house. It's like when you back Uncanny, you are the one, you're one of the people who, there's only a couple of thousand who pay for Uncanny when all is said and done. And we always do sell some ad revenue too, but for the most part, it's just these 3,000, whatever, I think it's about 3,000 people every year 3 to 4,000, whatever. I'm trying to find numbers out of my head, but not a huge number. But that financial support means that it can be online. And that means that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in some cases, of people can read these stories and poems and interviews and essays and see these covers, listen to the podcast. And so the people who don't have the means, people who can't afford it, they can still get to the things that they need to read, that really will change some cases, change a life, or at the very least, just make somebody feel better on a lousy day.
That's a good goal, I think.
Yes. Because, stories are for comfort, too. It's for whatever. We try to, there's a lot of different kinds of stories in Uncanny. So, the issue 75 authors, they're a good example, though. Like, you go down the list of those stories that won the awards. I mean, these are stories that people are still reading all the time. They're being taught in university courses and high schools. And
I might have taught a few Uncanny stories.
You might have.
No, I definitely have. I move around in the modern stuff because there's so much stuff. But I definitely have, because, I mean, usually award winners are a good place to point students, because then they'll use that as their bouncing off point to finding more stuff. So I do that periodically. R.S.A. Garcia has been taught. I've taught Brandon O'Brien from Uncanny, actually.
Ooh.
He actually came to one of my classes once when they read one of his poems, and then did a mini interview with them. It was really cool.
Yeah, Brandon has been in quite a few Uncanny Kickstarters through this.
Yes. Yeah. So there are a whole bunch of different rewards on this Kickstarter.
Yes.
And they really run the gamut in terms of types of things. So I don't want you to sort of go through literally all of them, but just kind of give us a sense of what kind of rewards people could find on the Kickstarter.
Well, one of the great things too about the Uncanny community is just how many of the creators, when they know this is coming up, and I ask very nicely, hey, do you have anything? They so generously will offer things for the Kickstarter, and And that's wonderful. So you can just buy the ebook. There are categories where you just get the ebooks. You get the thing. You have wonderful ebooks. And then the great thing about getting the Uncanny ebooks is that the content, we're bi-monthly, and we split the content between 2 months online. So like when you get the ebook, you get to read ahead of everybody else. So you get to it's like you get to time travel into the next month, and you're like, oh yeah, I've already read that story. I know what you all are going to be waiting for, and it's going to be great. But then you get up another level, and we usually send out, you can get postcards of the 3 covers that year, which hopefully we will fund the stretch goals so those covers exist, or we'll find something. But you will have postcards, and then there's and a magnet, a little Space Unicorn magnet you'll get. But then there are the higher roller moments. There are hangouts where you can talk to author or editor for a half hour, and much like we are right now. There are manuscript critiques if you're a writer and would love to have a professional writer or editor look at your thing, your story or your poem, or even in one case, I think it may have gone already, but a novel. That you can get notes, you can get professional critique on it, which is pretty amazing. And there's some really wonderful names in there. And there are signed books. And then there are lots of different unique and interesting things that, granted, I have to look and see what's already gone. But, because a lot of them are gone, from, original artwork to handcrafted little crocheted things to, there's just a whole bunches of different things. And hopefully, watch the Uncanny Kickstarter space, because there's going to maybe be another wave of things coming in a couple weeks. So, but lots of little bespoke things, including, it's always very exciting to see what people want, and and it's always fun to see what the different writers and editors and other folk will offer up.
And the stretch goals include some really cool stuff. So if we get to see some of those, the very first stretch goal is original art from John Picasso, which is cool. Which
will, assuming everything works out, because always, things can happen on the route, but that hopefully will be the issue 75 cover.
Oh, exciting! Okay.
So then the next one will be. Then there are also other original covers being offered from. Let's get to the first.
Ebenebe is.
Yes, Edge.
And then Grace Fong, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Grace Fong. Yeah. So yes, so they will also be doing original covers. If we've made those stretch goals previously, so hopefully we still will. And then after that, if we keep going, and hopefully we will, then there'll be some staff raises, because this is the best staff in the universe and they deserve more money. And then, we will bring back flash fiction and a novella each year. So more content. So like if you can get more people, if you are backing the Kickstarter, to also back the Kickstarter, then you will get more content without having to spend more to get said content. You just have to talk to your friends and go, oh, this is important. It's important to keep these magazines running and being fruitful.
I will say that the subscriber level is $36, and someone who is on this call at this moment may have just backed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, person who's on.
I try to back as many magazines as I can justify spending money on, and I think I've backed Uncanny basically every year. So
I believe you have.
I think so. And if I missed one, I'm sorry. Please don't hate me.
I will. It's fine. It's fine. It happens. It happens. No, it's always, and it's a great thing to have this kind of connection to everyone for the month of the Kickstarter, where you do feel kind of this swell of love about what Uncanny is doing, and that the people still care, and that's the thing. Like I said in my editorial, it's very stressful, but basically every year this is the referendum: does Uncanny deserve to exist another year? And everyone, the readers, get to decide. This is where you decide. It's with money, but that's how businesses work. And this, if the Kickstarter funds, then I'll gladly make another year. I'll be excited to make another, because there should be another exciting year.
So Paul has a question in chat, which I think is a very interesting one, because at the very beginning of this, we mentioned the very first time we interviewed in a hotel room in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And Paul asks, did you imagine how strong and how long the magazine would go at that time?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, because it's like, yes, but probably not with all the twists and turns that happened. Like, I certainly thought that I wanted to do it for a while, and I think that for me, it was much more about I think at that point I was thinking more of the first 5 years. And then I was just thinking about, but I definitely at that time thought 10 years was possible. I think more than 10 years I was. Now, granted, at that point, if you'd asked me, I probably would have said, well, if we're not making the real money by then, no. But, as it turned out, no, the real money never happened. But the love of it's still there. So and that part's hard because it is, I would love very much that this was my only job because I put in full-time hours on Uncanny. But, pays me very little still. So this is still, it pays me a little bit. It's not, Uncanny has never lost money. But it is, so probably if you'd talk, then said about run, probably it'd be like, oh yeah, it's got to be earning this much for me by that point or else it's not worth it. And, I've changed my mind multiple times. Yeah, I can't, I just can't walk away from it. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, because like even on days where I get very grumpy about whatever's going on, like it just, all it takes is watching, the acceptance, sending that acceptance for a story from a newer writer or, seeing on social media somebody who's just discovered a story and it's like, oh, yeah, this is the best story ever. Oh, my mind was blown. And it's wonderful. It's still such a good feeling. And I look around and we've talked about it, like it's precarious for the other mags. And I feel like Uncanny is still needed. I think there are a lot of other great magazines, but I hope that a lot of them, that more will happen and more things will sprout up. But, it's a tricky thing to run a magazine. It is a lot of work. You have to really, as you've said, the passion has to be there because there's a million reasons every day to just walk away because it's not a lot of money. And for a lot of magazines, they're losing money.
Yeah, this is I don't think I've ever used the phrase with my students when I talk about like the history of like the pulp magazines where there's like 50 of them at one moment and then like all of them are gone by the end of a year, right? And it's like, well, magazine publishing in science fiction and fantasy, I suppose in particular, probably most magazine publishing is not the get-rich-quick scheme you think it is. No. It really has to be about passion. You have to love it or you're just not going to do it for very long.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of people who are doing like the magazines, and that's it. But mostly they have other sources of income, so they can do that one way or another, or in family income, or whatever, the spouse or whatever. But like, there's only one magazine. There's only like a couple of magazines that have staff, and that's about it. They are paper in a different realm of things. The online magazines. None of us are getting paid a living wage. It's makes more sense for any of us to just drop this and walk away. But when you love it, and you can see that it makes a difference in the world.
I agree. And I think it has to be said that Uncanny has had a pretty significant impact in its currently 12 going on 13. I'm just going to assume 13. So I'm just,
Fingers crossed, everyone. Let's make this happen.
Your impact is massive. I mean, when you look at like just a Hugo ballot category, the number of nominations over the course of the last decade and change, it's a pretty substantial number. I'm not saying like awards are the only way you can tell, right? Because that's not a very fair metric on its own. But this is one way that people look at science fiction and fantasy and horror over time, as they kind of look at like, well, which magazines are the ones that were getting lots of attention from award crowds? And Uncanny has been on almost every major SFFH award that I know of multiple times over its tenure. And I suppose an adjacent part of Paul's question to ask here would be, we could like think about the sort of business side of whether or not you kind of thought we would still be going this long. But from a sort of impact side, did you think Uncanny was going to have this? Or was that not part of the aspiration?
It was the aspiration, but, I came from a different magazine that had that aspiration. And there was little nibbles and some things happened, but it was not like it really broke through. And like, certainly there was a plan with Uncanny to come out big and strong. And, the solicited authors of that year one are still kind of a pretty major, you look at a lot of those, it's like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good name we got. And, and then a lot of the authors who are coming in through the unsolicited, because the thing to always remember, the Uncanny is different than most magazines. We do that where we solicit like 25 to 30% of the authors, and everything else is unsolicited submissions. But like, I think it really hit after issue 2 got the award nominations, because like 3 of the 6 stories were nominated for an award out of issue 2, and one won a Hugo Award, and and the other the other one, another one of them that didn't win, I think, has become kind of a classic in the genre. So like, it's like I started to go like, okay, something's going on, it's something special. But still, like, it took a couple of years for the awards to kind of, it was still like a couple of awards nominations here, a couple there, the first few years. And then it did start building and building. And I think one of the things that I love that makes me so happy is also that, like, every award has its own little weirdness. Like, if you study science fiction fantasy awards, they all have their own kind of like weird culture of how they get there, whether it's a jury or membership of a convention or a combination or online voting or magazine, like all these things. And one of the things, but they're all different kind of groups of folks who are really working on these awards, invested on these awards. And what makes me so happy is that Uncanny stories and other pieces are in all of them. Like, it's not like and have won in almost all of these awards. So like, it can be something that is a juried, horror thing like the Shirley Jackson Awards, or it can be something that, is a fellow magazine like Locus's awards, that are voted on by their subscribers and stuff, that group of people, or the Worldcon members who come together, or the science fiction writers who get together, like all of them have recognized a lot of these stories as being like, these are stories that mean something to us and we think are very, very good. And that's awesome. It makes me very happy because as you said, like, a lot of people, when they read science fiction fantasy, one of the things they do is like, oh, what are the nominees? What are the winners? I'm going to go back and read those. And that's great because that way, the stories are getting read. And like, the Uncanny model has always been like, one of the reasons why we do the solicit, sparring the Kickstarter excitement, is also in working with these amazing authors, is also the idea that like, okay, people are coming to the magazine because they are well familiar with this person. And I hope that they then stick around and read the next 2 stories after, because then they'll discover, maybe they're going to discover somebody where it's their 3rd story. And it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing too. And I need to talk about this, and that's the thing. Like, and the awards get the readers, who are looking, and hopefully when they see, wow, Uncanny stories seem to get a lot of award nominations, maybe I should just keep reading through the mag. That hopefully they will discover these newer voices, these voices that maybe from places that are less familiar, or come from points of view they're less familiar with, and or maybe they are very familiar with it. It's like, finally, I'm seeing this point of view, and I'm seeing someone from my point of view here. And it's a wonderful thing.
You've mentioned the point of view, the sort of widening of point of view a bunch of different times, and so I want to talk about it actually a little bit.
Right.
I teach a science fiction class at a community college, and one of the things I just told myself, regardless of whatever dumb politics is going on, is this is going to be a diverse telling as much as I can reasonably make it for the history of science fiction, right? With a recognition that we have to talk about some of the ways in which diversity was not as easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
But today I find that our field is much more diverse today than it certainly was before. And a big part of the sort of puzzle now is trying to give space for lots of points of view that we normally wouldn't hear from. Mm-hmm. And especially in like American science fiction, and the internet makes this that we can actually solve this problem.
Yes.
And you've mentioned that this is obviously very important. It is part of the sort of editorial strategy of Uncanny, is to sort of pursue those other voices. And I kind of was hoping you could talk a little bit about sort of, on the one hand, you're soliciting, which is part of this, but then there's that percentage where you're hoping you also find those voices in the slush, essentially. Yeah. And what is that whole process of, how does that come to be, where you kind of discover that new voice and you go, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. We gotta have this thing in here now.
Yeah, and it's pretty. I mean, part of it is that I started with I'm trying to have a very diverse group of submissions editors who are going through the slush, and Uncanny by its nature, we only open like basically for a month a year. We get a deluge at that point. So it is a lot to get through. But everyone knows, usually once we fund the Kickstarter that we're going to be opening soon. So hopefully they hold on to their stories that are Uncanny-esque, or they hope so. I hope so. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and then all these stories come in, and then they come up to me, and basically it's just, I just have, the joy of like reading these things. And part of it is that I feel that as time has gone on, as more people know what Uncanny is, and they realize, all I have to have is an internet connection. I can send them a story when they're open, that the barrier is not there, and that we're hopefully, that they trust us with their work, and if they see other works from all over the place and go, they will publish this kind of story, and then I get more, and I get to read them, and I get to be excited. I only have so many slots, and that can be sad sometimes, but but I do think that, at the end of the year, it's a pretty solid year of stories for anybody. And I think that, and I want that story to represent a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. It can be difficult to get all the things I want every year. But I think if you look at where science fiction magazines were in the 1990s and where they are right now, and I'd like to hope that we're part of that movement away from it being just one kind of story for one kind of reader.
I think so, because Jason Sanford, I don't know if it's originally his word, but several years ago he used the phrase, we're in the rainbow era.
I first heard that from Elizabeth Bear.
Okay, so it may have been Bear, and then maybe he borrowed that from Bear, and I've missed the connection there. I would submit that specifically online magazines, because I think that some of the print ones kind of took a minute to kind of catch up to a little bit more of this, really pushed that. And Uncanny would be one of those that I would say pushed that. Among Strange Horizons would be another that I would say is part of that. By publishing more voices that typically we just would not see in the genre at all. And I'll just use my very selfish example because I love him to death, which is Brandon O'Brien, who has been published in Uncanny several times. He's a Trinidadian writer, and he brings in a lot of his culture into his work. And it sometimes breaks my heart when I read it because it's just very powerful, and also sometimes terrifies me because he writes about scary things sometimes.
Brandon has been in 3 different categories in Uncanny. Yeah, he just has to draw a cover now. Is where he's at.
I'll let him know.
Because he has had poetry, essays, and short stories all published in Uncanny.
It's very interesting to see, and I'm glad Uncanny is one of them to sort of. I think almost organically got here. It didn't. Well, I suppose there's deliberate choices behind the scenes, but it didn't have to be dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. If that makes sense.
It was certainly what I wanted from the magazine from day one. But it also was just getting there and just reading widely and opening my brain up to other things, and continuing to evolve my editorial tastes and questioning my own biases,
which everybody should do, I think.
Which, I hope that others do that. There was actually an awkward moment at a convention once where an editor was asked that and said, "No, I haven't changed at all." Through the years, and it's that's okay.
That's not a thing you admit in public.
It was a weird own there, and it was okay, but you
should change. I think.
Yeah, no, it should be changed. It should keep changing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're reading this field of science fiction, you if you're in a bubble where you just read one point of view or one group of point of views, for time, I mean, you just simply aren't engaged with what's happening in the genre anymore.
Yeah, and I understand that there are readers from other eras who wish to have stories that are still being written like the stories they loved at the time.
Sure,
that is a definite market, but it is not what I am trying to do. That's not what Uncanny wants. We are not serving that readership. I mean, they're welcome to come read our stories. Not going to stop them. But I also understand this can be one of those. I do tell writers, please do not look at the places like Goodreads and some other corners of the internet if your story's just been nominated for a Hugo, because you're going to see some takes.
Oh yeah.
Which usually come down to John W. Campbell wouldn't have published that. It's you're probably right. He probably would not have published that.
But John W. Campbell would not have published a lot of stuff that we should question very significantly. Okay. I mean, there's a weird... that is a sidebar. This is not Uncanny related, but I'm just going to say it.
That's okay.
There are people from other cultural points of view who write, like, Campbellian Golden Age science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're just not about, like... white male heroes, like your scientist figure from like a 1950s sci-fi movie. So you could still read a little more widely, guys. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't want to get too lost in that. So one of the things that you had mentioned, and I got to talk to you about it, is staff, because you are editor-in-chief, but that means that you have other people that you work with, and you have quite a number of folks working with you from a wide range of different backgrounds doing various things. And I kind of wanted to talk about, talking about how you've put together your staff. How do you find people? Do they reach out to you? And then kind of talking about how you all work together. Because this is, a group, it is effectively partly a group project, essentially.
Oh, it's kind of been a mix through the years. Sometimes it has been like, especially in a moment when someone is needed in a hurry, it is like, oh, okay, I know someone who can do that. Let's see if they can. Other times we have opened up, and had, especially for assistant editors, but we will just kind of open up and have kind of a hiring. We did that with nonfiction before. Though, like in this case, the current staff change that just happened is, managing editor Monty Lin is now also going to be the nonfiction editor, which is very exciting to me. Because, Monty's been managing editing for quite a few years. And, I trust Monty's judgment quite a bit. And Monty is, actually originally had applied to be a nonfiction. It was like a long route for Monty because he had originally applied to be the nonfiction editor and, then ended up as an assistant editor, then ended up as the managing editor. So, like, it's exciting that he's, now finally it's like, oh, okay, it's got time now, and it seemed like a new challenge, and it was like, okay, now is the time for this. So Monty is going to wear both hats, and Betsy Aoki had been published many times in Uncanny and just had this great background, and just once again had our poetry editor Betsy. I knew that Betsy would bring a different point of view, than I had at the moment, so it was very exciting, and then The podcast editors, Stephen Shapansky and Erica Ensign, and they've been there since day one. They've just always been, so they're good friends in core, but also we'd worked together in the podcast world of Doctor Who podcasty stuff. I mean, they came from Doctor Who podcasting more. They've done a lot of other things since, but then they're still there in Doctor Who world. But it's, and then Carolyn M. Yoakum came on as interviewer, and she's just been fabulous and has been done hundreds of interviews now with the authors, and and that's gone well. And Matt Peters, is just a fabulous one of our, along with Erica, just fabulous readers on the podcast. And then Tanya Chen, who's our assistant editor, has just been awesome. And Tanya is doing all this while also working on their PhD, which is phenomenal. So, and then just all the submission editors, and just there's a lot of people who contribute to this magazine. And it's a great staff, and it's wonderful to have all these different voices there to talk to and bounce ideas off of, and to hear their ideas and input. It's another way that keeps Uncanny from ossifying. It just keeps it moving forward.
Speaking of moving forward, right? So we're pushing for year 13, and I kind of asked, in Paul's question earlier, right, talking about the very beginning of this, and you've said your mind has kind of shifted a bit, over the last decade and 2 extra years. Do you think there's another 13?
Well, I was just talking to my wife Kirsty about this, and she's currently a submissions editor, and she's having, it's. I think that one of the things is that here I am, like I'm doing this, and I'm also content editing for the It's Story Time with Will Wheaton podcast, and reading more and more stories. It's like I'm only getting more and more excited about the field. And every time I run into a new author, a new story, a new thing, it's like, wow, this is so good. This is so good. I want people to experience this. I want people to read this. I want people to hear it. So, as long as that keeps happening, I think that the only thing that's going to stop it is once against the referendum. It's at some point, maybe people decide, we're done with this. We want to have Elon Musk chips in our head giving us
God, no.
banals, nothing. And we want to be dead inside. And magazines no longer, stories mean nothing to us anymore. Like, maybe that, I hope that doesn't happen. But, as long as that doesn't happen, yeah, I think that I'm still excited about this. And, part of the biggest problem for me is just, the time. Just my life has changed in quite a few ways, and I do have to earn money. And, Uncanny is a very big undertaking. So, like, if I wasn't passionate, then everything makes sense to shut it down, sell it off, do whatever. Though at this point, I don't know if selling off works anymore, Max. But, it's kind of a weird, but I also don't want to. Like, I don't want to sell it. I don't want to stop running it. Like, I would wake, it's like, this is like one of those things where, like, I have this talk, once again, with Kirsty and others, I care about, where it's like, I would take $5 million for Uncanny. I would sell it for $5 million. And then it's like, the discussion immediately goes to, what will I do with that money? Well, I would start a magazine. And call it Uncanny, or I don't know.
For a long time.
Then I could fund that magazine for a while. Call it Uncanny, or the other magazine that is competing with my old magazine. But like, yeah, no, it's this is still a lot of fun. It's still a lot of fun, and as long as people seem to be enjoying it, and I can find a way to make it work one way or another, then I want to keep doing it.
So I don't want to dampen the mood, but I have to ask, because you brought up the chips in our head from you know who, and it makes me think of a different technology which is obviously taking the world for a ride. And it is affecting me in a very different way than I think fiction editing, fiction publishing would, because I'm in a student environment where I see most of the writing. But obviously there's been a lot of conversation about it, and I'm curious about your perspective from, the other side of the submission portal here, of the sort of AI problem, where you kind of see things at the moment, and what are your concerns?
Well, it's a weird thing, because there's a lot of things about it which I find to be, like, I hate AI. Let me just first make it clear. I have no desire to publish AI works. I do not like AI works. I do not like AI in general. I don't like it in other things. I'm not saying that LLMs might have certain uses in certain places in our world, but where things are, the monetized version of AI that they tried to rush to market to try to get people to use for things that they didn't need it for, that are creating environmentally destroying data centers everywhere, that are just garbage as far as what they actually do and do not save any time. I hate it. I also realize that at the moment, this is the world we're in, that a lot of people, plenty of universities have gone all in on, like, wow, we got a deal with this company and a deal with this company, and you're going to come to this, we're going to help you learn how to use it in class, and students are going to be raised on it for a while. And, and there's going to be, and almost everybody at their workplace, if you have a white collar kind of place, is like, well, yeah, you got to do put it through the this and put it through the that, and, got a subscription to this, and, the Jet GPT and the Claude and the blah, 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 blah is going to help you. And it's like, no, it doesn't, but okay. So it's difficult, because it is, I realize that, I'm spitting against the ocean right here to some degree. Like, the waves are coming in and we can fight our fight, and we do. I do think that there are certain aspects of it that maybe we've gotten a little over, like it's hard to explain, because like I once again, it's like, I don't want to say that this stuff isn't bad, like that it even exists. But also I'm going to say this, the stories are shit. Like, they're just terrible. And like, I still feel confident with my years of experience that I can spot this stuff. Like, I am not super concerned that I am going to put AI slop in Uncanny. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, can I guarantee that 10 years from now, especially if someone is hybrid using it in a way where it's more disguised? I can't. Like, I can't any more than there are certain ways, like, once again, in academia, like the way students can cheat. Sometimes you can't stop all of it from happening. You couldn't always stop people. Remember back when paper mills were the cheats?
Yep. I miss it.
It was so much a simpler time. But even then, like, you couldn't catch everything that came out of a paper mill. You couldn't catch everything that someone had a friend write it for them. Like this is the, it's always like I can announce a zero tolerance policy and I know what will happen, that there's always going to be, like, I can't guarantee that some piece has a paragraph that had a little AI in it. Like, I have it in my contracts, you're not supposed to. And if I catch it, you'll be kicked out. But that's the other problem is, the catching of it, because there really aren't good AI detectors, especially when you're detecting on authors who may have fed the original algorithms with their work, their works were stolen for it. So it's a difficult thing. But for me, it's a matter of, we're not going to publish it. If I find out that it'll be removed. It's not going to be at Uncanny be removed with much fanfare. It's just going to be removed, from where we have things. And that'll be that. I am not a proponent of naming and shaming. I am not because I don't believe that is fundamentally useful to the situation. I will sometimes announce things like, I'm seeing a lot of AI, just so people realize this is a thing going on. Like I did see in the last couple of years, much more AI use from people who are already previously published writers.
Oh, no.
It's now granted, usually it's more semi-pro-zines, free fanzines, smaller level markets, but you can just read it and just go, you totally AI'd this section. That's not a good section. And that makes me, because it's like one thing that was like completely generated AI slop that was like, okay, this is just someone knocking out 50 stories an hour to try to, because they found a website saying, make money from writing. The way, that's where the big money is, the short story writing. But like,
money.
So I'm not a believer into detectors, but I'm also, like if I'd like to think that it wouldn't make it in there. And if I did find out, I would just remove it. And I am not going to, but at the same time, I'm not going to ask writers to turn over their work. I'm not going to start having everybody write short stories in front of me in the classroom, with pen and paper, so I can make sure it's their own. Like it's what it is. And this is the world we live in. It's just like, I could never guarantee that somebody didn't plagiarize, because I actually wasn't throwing every story through plagiarism machines. Yeah. And sometimes that got caught. The other magazines got caught by that. And remember when Daily Science Fiction got caught by a plagiarized story once.
It happens. Yeah.
These things happen. So do my best to keep it out. It is a thing I don't want. And I am hoping that this is one of those things that, over the next few years, that the marketplace will speak, that people just do not want this tech, or at least not as it is, and not the way that it is destroying the world, not the way that it is destroying our rotting, just our skills and our brains and our enjoyment of our work. And like, for those who do enjoy work, not everyone has to enjoy work, but like it's that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm thinking, and I feel that looking at, it's like, so there was like, literally I'm watching YouTube videos and they're like a Chase Bank video comes up. And like the whole point of this ad was that Chase still has humans. Like it was a guy who was like having trouble with his Alexa type thing, and then was in a Wemo, and he just had all these tech things break down on him, and all the AI not work for him. And it's like, at Chase, you get to talk to a person, and it's like goes into a branch and sees a person. And it's like the fact that a major organization that handles all these monies is like going, okay, we can feel the wind. I feel the wind is still like, consumers are not embracing this stuff. I think the companies and universities and many other places are bamboozled for a bit. But likewise, like, I feel like writers who are using it are not going to see success. No one is going to become this massive breakout star of writing because they were like, aha, my co-author Claude and I sure did make millions off of all you suckers. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that people are going to go, so like the people who are using this tech are eventually going to just wander off because they're not having any success. And hopefully the tech just kind of, people go down a different route, and just slowly the companies quietly minimize these things that they've spent way too billions and trillions on.
I really hope so. I will say one bit of supportive positive from the trenches of teaching in a college environment in my in-person classes, almost overwhelmingly the last 2 semesters, this summer and this past spring, pretty much every single student was not in on the AI thing. Most of them were pretty negative. The like most lukewarm I'd get would be just it's kind of interesting, and that's about it. And most of what I'm seeing is just like using Grammarly and that kind of stuff, but none of them really like those machines. And so something has happened among the young folk. They're not a big fan, at least in my in-person classes. Online's a different thing, but I feel like online education, I'm interacting with not even humans half the time. So, but that's a different problem of it just not at the same social environment.
No, I think there's always going to be a couple of people. There's going to be some people who do spend a lot of time using AI and do fall thoroughly into it. And I've seen that at one of my freelance jobs where there's a person there where it's like very clearly like, yeah, you cannot do anything now without doing this thing. But yeah, it's just fundamentally, it doesn't make good work, and it doesn't and if you're having it kicked back to you, or it's just like, once again, like if revenues are going down because AI generated stuff is, you're going to see this like with the films, and it's where like the more AI, like you're not going to see these AI created films. Like, yeah, maybe Netflix for their cheap ass terrible things are using more. I saw a report today about that they were using a lot of AI, but like nobody says these things are good, and like they're not getting watched to that level. And something that is much more organic and created by people, those are the things that still make the money. That's the things that are still successful, so, and that's the thing, in the end, capitalism is going to follow that. So like, I feel like there are many terrible things about capitalism, things that can happen by capitalism. I actually think that in the end, AI will be defeated just by the fact that people don't like the product.
I kind of hope so. My dream is that they decide that these technologies could be repurposed to replace drudgery so that we can just focus more on creation and being weird little humans. Because gosh, that would just be so fun to just have like people painting in the park and like weird interpretive dance, like just be weird humans, and we don't have to do drudgery. That's what I want.
I am perfectly fine with a Jetsons future where I've got robots in the house doing all the housework.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't want to vacuum. That's boring.
Though to be fair, there are some questions there about Rosie's sentience and
Okay, we can't go there. Because this is going to lead down a whole thing where, like, when I broke my students' minds about, like, if you think about Star Wars, all of the droids are enslaved. And they went, what? And I was like, yep. And then they thought through it and they went, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, that's why you just don't think about it, because it changes how you see the whole universe.
Yeah, that's something you have to buy the General Grievous was right t-shirt.
Yes. It really messes with your head. Anyway. Okay. Well, we got to start winding down. The Kickstarter is currently up. It is at the time of this recording about halfway. But hopefully by the time this is, it'll be higher. Are there anything else you'd like to tell folks about it other than go to Kickstarter.com and look for Uncanny Year 13?
Look for the Uncanny Year 13 Kickstarter. It has got 26 days to go. As of this second, there are 444 backers at $28,061 with a $55,000 goal. So yes, past the halfway point now. But for me, like the goal is just the bare minimum. Obviously, I'd love to have especially the covers. So hopefully, last year we hit 62. So hopefully we will do that again this year and maybe even surpass it, which would be awesome, because then we could get even more things to everybody. So this is more just a please run around and tell people. And also, like, as much as I'm like yay Kickstarter, it's also like, please go to uncannymagazine.com and read things and and listen to our podcast. And also, now that I'm there too, working for Will, give it's Storytime with Will Wheaton his podcast a listen. Will also has a Patreon for the podcast. So, and Will is doing a lot of work right now, like what we've been talking about, trying to find all these new writers to him and spread them out to the people who are fans of Will Wheaton. And it's very exciting to hand Will these stories and go, I know, and then have Will then go and read them to the whole world, and that's awesome. So because Will has a different different platform than Uncanny does. So, and a lot of the other magazines do. So hopefully Will is, it's also spreading the love of science fiction and fantasy and horror short stories to more and more people. And then maybe these will be people then come to Uncanny and then go, wow, I want to make sure this exists. And wow, I will back this Kickstarter so I can have this joyous little jewels of stories to sit there and read when I luxuriate in my wherever luxuriating space is.
And where would folks find Uncanny Magazine, by the way?
Well, we can be found at uncannymagazine.com. Uncanny Magazine is also for sale at all good ebook retailers out there, and maybe even a couple of not as good, but they're there. We live with them.
Yeah.
But waitlist books I very highly recommend if you want a subscription to the ebooks. Reading it online it's free on uncannymagazine.com. If you are different levels of our Patreon, much like the Kickstarter, you also get the ebooks that way. So there's many ways to read Uncanny and many ways to support. And the best way to support is always just running around and when you love something and just spreading the word. Yeah.
That is the general thing everybody can do. If you like a thing, tell other people about it.
Yeah. Because it is better than, the thing goes up on the internet is vast and full of, and harder to search thanks to enshittification everywhere. So it is very good if people go, oh, wow, this one story, go read it in Uncanny or Strange Horizons or Lightspeed or Faya or wherever.
Well, Michael, thank you for coming on the show with us today.
It was a pleasure,
just me, I guess.
And the snakes.
And the snakes, yeah, that's Santiago over there that you probably saw, so.
Santiago is very busy this evening.
Yeah, he's hungry, so.
I will probably make sure I am gone before
before
feeding time.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to feed him live on, no, I can't do that, it's a little weird. Yes. No, he'll get fed on Sunday, but it'll be fine, yeah. Well, for folks that are with us at home, just as a reminder, skiffingfandy@gmail.com if you want to send us a message or something. And then if you are a member of the Patreon, you get access to the Discord. You can go in and talk about the show. If you want to let us know that you backed Uncanny, they'll know, but also it'd be nice if we know. That'd be kind of cool. So please do that. And then if you'd like to find the show, we're at skiffingfanty.com. And if you put /Skiffy things on it, you'll find links to all of our socials and on YouTube, etc., so that you can find those things. And then again, if you have money that you don't need, go give it to Uncanny first, and then if there's money left over, you can give it to us at patreon.com/skiffyandfanty.
That is an excellent plan.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of Patreon supporters that I am gonna thank very, very fast. So here goes. Adam the Adventurous, Andrew the Abiding, Cameron the Chthonic, Caroline the Benevolent, Carrie the Divine, Chris the Candescent, Dan the Transient, Daniel the Cultured, David the Debonair, Elizabeth the Electrifying, Erica the Esteemed, Jeff the Gracious, Joe the Jocund, Joseph the Jovial, Juan the Junctional, KB the Kind, Karen the Kickass, Kat the Kinematic, Matthew the Magnificent, Paul the Pious, Robert the Reliable, Robin the Bold, Ryan the Resilient, Sarah A. the Sensational, Sarah E. the Sublime, and Sarah O. the Rapturous, Stephen the Strange, Tari the Thorough, who's my mom, Tanya the Triumphant, and Trish the Imperturbable. I'm at SeanDuke.net. Just put /Duke things on there, and you can find my nonsense. With that in mind, Skiffy Fanny bylaws require me to make this hopeful. And my hopeful statement will just be that there are beautiful things like Uncanny Magazine and other science fiction, fantasy, and horror magazines that are still making interesting stuff. And so the world is not entirely a trash fire. It has these brilliant moments of joy and wonder and terror and beauty and all of the feelings and emotions that come with them. So go read Uncanny Magazine, or else.
Yes, couldn't have said it better.
And on that note, happy ending, or hopeful ending, and see you. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.